The clock hits 11:58 p.m. Outside the 592 Night Owl, the world is reduced to a blur of wet pavement and amber streetlights. Our narrator is fighting a losing battle against a 14-hour shift, her chin slipping off her hand as sleep pulls at her eyelids. Inside, the cabin traps the heavy scent of damp wool coats and the faint metallic tang of ozone leaking from the heating vents. The rhythmic, droning hum of the engine creates a vacuum, sealing her into the commute. As the bus crosses the river and leaves the dense city center behind, the stops become further apart. Exhausted line cooks and late-shift nurses step off into the drizzle, leaving the cabin increasingly hollow. Eventually, she is certain she is the last one left, but sitting in the very back row, shrouded in the dimmest part of the bus, is a single remaining passenger. At first glance, he looks like another tired commuter, but as she squints through the gloom, the details are wrong. He is wearing a heavy wool transit conductor's jacket with tarnished brass buttons, a uniform the city retired over 50 years ago. She watches him stare out the window into the pitch-black night, and then a cold spike of adrenaline hits her. The glass is highly reflective in the dark, yet there is absolutely no reflection of the man sitting right beside it. The exhaustion vanishes, replaced by a primal dread. The routine commute has broken. She is locked inside a moving metal box with something that shouldn't exist. Panic tries to take hold, but her brain scrambles for a logical lifeline. She tells herself her eyes are failing to process light and shadow correctly, blaming the impossible physics on severe sleep deprivation. Desperate to test reality, she reaches up and pulls the yellow cord to request the next stop. The cord gives way with a dead, slack snap. No bell rings. The stop requested sign remains dark. As the bus barrels past the next intersection, the streetlights sweep through the cabin. The shadows cast across the ribbed rubber floor refuse to behave normally. They stretch and warp into incredibly long, sharp angles, lingering seconds after the light has passed. When her eyes snap back to the rear of the bus, the passenger hasn't moved a muscle. Yet, without making a single sound, he is now sitting exactly one seat closer to her. The rationalizations collapse. The dead stop cord and the delayed shadows prove this isn't a trick of an exhausted mind. The physical space inside the bus is actively deteriorating. Driven by survival instinct, she abandons her seat and stumbles down the aisle, intent on reaching the driver to force an emergency stop. The environment rejects her movement. The engine roar grows deafening, and the metal handrails rattle so aggressively they bruise her palms as she fights her way toward the front. She grabs the plastic partition behind the wheel, ready to scream, but the words die in her throat. The heavy leather driver's seat is completely empty, and the bus is speeding up. She looks out the massive windshield, praying to see the road. Instead, the street and the city have been swallowed. A thick, opaque white fog presses against the glass, and the steering wheel begins turning on its own. The isolation is absolute. There are no brakes to press, no road to crash onto, and no physical laws left to govern the vehicle. She is at the mercy of whatever is steering her into the void. Suddenly, the tires shriek. The bus pitches forward and slams to a halt. The fog parts to reveal towering, rusted iron gates overgrown with vines, an impossible structure miles from any route on the city grid. The suffocating tension in the cabin evaporates. She turns to find the back row passenger standing right beside her. The cold aura is gone. He looks at her with an expression of profound, crushing sorrow. He raises a hand, points back toward the aisle, and speaks in a voice that sounds like settling dust. He tells her she boarded too early. She does not belong on this route, and she must go back. He stands between her and the iron bars. The fear of being hunted is gone, replaced by the understanding that he was never following her. He was holding the line, keeping her from crossing a threshold she isn't ready for. Before she can reply, a deafening mechanical crack shatters the silence. The gates and the bus vanish, replaced instantly by the chaotic blur of heavy rain and the blinding strobes of emergency lights. She gasps for air, choking on rainwater. She isn't on a bus. she is pinned to a stretcher on the side of a highway, staring at the smoking, mangled wreckage of her own car. The impact happened at 11:58 p.m., a single, violent microsecond. But for the mind, that moment fractured. 45 minutes of terror, of stops missed and shadows stretched, lived and died inside the time it takes for glass to shatter. The tattered wool and the tarnished buttons are echoes of an older role. It is a transit line that only runs at the edges of existence, steered by a figure who has been clearing the tracks between this life and the next long before the invention of the bus. The boundary between the living and the dead is a thin one, often rationalized through the mundane images of our daily lives. So the next time you find yourself fighting off sleep in transit, take a closer look at the other passengers. You never know whose route you might have accidentally joined.